We rejoin this very important meeting, where a small group of founders are planning the next steps to combat the growing threats from both the old world and the new.
Back when we first made the leap to this new world, if you remember, we used the portal to get here. It was hard to make, took a lot of energy, and made a bit of a spectacle. It was good that we had such a secluded location to keep everything secret. Over the years, when we had to start sneaking back here and there to get more supplies, we had to get in and get out as quickly and as quietly as possible so no one would have any suspicion that we're here. No one could know about us. We developed far better ways of interacting with the world and popping back and forth without being noticed. These missions were always very secret and done with the highest levels of caution. When we all saw how society was not growing as smoothly or as peacefully as we imagined, we thought it best to make my research even more secret than it already had been. This research had already given us security once. Most among the founders felt that far more research would be needed if we were going to save our group from the old world, once they too developed the technology to come here. Even from the start, while others were mining, I was researching. As others plowed, planted crops, built infrastructure, I was researching. I am very grateful for the many labors that everyone did to allow me the abundant time to keep working. I have also been afforded a level of secrecy reserved for very few. Those who have been involved in the missions to obtain equipment and supplies from the old world know that we can pop in and out without portals now. What I have been keeping secret from almost everyone is that we have made quantum leaps in the energy efficiency of the process. We are able to more smoothly and quickly move between realms than we ever thought possible. The improvements were not just by a little bit, but by far more than I had known to be possible when we first made the leap.
When we first made the leap, we were starting out in a new world, and had to build everything quite literally from scratch. This left us in an almost impossible position to defend. We were very lucky then that the old world was more worried about killing each other than trying to develop non-military related science. This time, we are not so lucky. We can no longer afford to escape anywhere, no matter the dimension or distance. We could not even start building the infrastructure we need to survive, let alone defend ourselves. They could easily follow us and kill us all, no matter where we hide. On the other hand, if we stay and fight, we would be yet more targets for the mutually assured destruction that everyone in the old world faces on a daily basis. We had to get a different idea this time, now that we had more time and resources to plan something.
So when researching, I found a new interesting trick that we can use to help us with this problem. As you know, when the small energy particles that we all are made out of go back and forth between their natural energy frequencies, they remember where they were at and what they were doing. The same particle can be a part of a tree in one realm, a desk in another, and a part of a wall in yet another. As the particles keep going back and forth in their endless cycle, they always remember where they were at and stay neatly in place each and every time. I had found a way to force the particles to stay in place as part of a desk, even when they phase into a different frequency. To make it more simple, instead of traveling naturally between being a part of a desk, a wall, a tree, and other objects when the particle changes in frequency or energy level, I can force that particle to stay in its position in a desk, even in other dimensions or frequencies. When it should go into its position as being part of the tree, I force it to stay in its position in the desk, even in realms that had never seen a desk before. This technique is called atom sharing. We can literally copy any item or building just by forcing the atoms to not move out of place as they go from one frequency to the next. This technique works best on stationary things like buildings and items, not on things like food or animals. With this technology, we can copy our existing infrastructure and even things from the old world and place them on several other dimensions. We can then pop back and forth far quicker than they can. This will buy us time to keep destroying their more primitive portals far more quickly than they can rebuild them. This can make us safe, but the cost of this is stability. We will be like nomads leaping between empty worlds. We will have all the infrastructure we need to keep going without rebuilding.
Wow, that is truly amazing. But that does not sound easy for most here to do. Roughly 99 people out of 100 either do not work, or do not work with a regular schedule. It is already a very heavy burden, the few have, to take care of the many. Even with all of the robots and labor-saving techniques we have, I cannot imagine us being able to continue supporting everyone, defend ourselves, and pop back and forth constantly, to evade the old world. Obviously evading the old world is the priority here, but what about all those who we support here? At this point, I am not sure if they can, or would want to even support themselves, no matter the cost to their safety. We have been working tirelessly to get them to improve, but all they do is get worse. At this rate, they will soon be almost as big of a threat as the old world is. These are all of our descendants, our own flesh and blood. I cannot stand the thought of putting them at risk, yet I do not know how we can keep doing this.
They are our flesh and blood, and we do love them unconditionally. They are also free and have agency of their own. There's more than enough resources for any who want to come, to have a spot with us, as we have ate the old world. You are right though, in order for any of us to survive, we will all have to pull our own weight. If we do not, there's no way we can defend, leap constantly, feed ourselves, and research our way out of this. We'll have to go with only those willing to carry their own weight. If we stay hidden, mobile, and a constant threat to the old world, we should have the resources to keep them from the others that choose to risk staying. The robots and their own should be enough to keep them fed here in this spot. If we are mobile and good enough, we should be able to keep them safe. But we cannot force people to take this seriously.
Fair enough. All can go if they choose. With the current circumstances, this is all we can do. I wish we could do more.
But why? We tried everything. We started off with no violence and a very supportive community. Yes, times were hard, but they were given so much. This is the only society in history to ever have gone so long without money. They have been given more than any other group in history. I do agree that they made their own bed, and now have to lie in it. They have free will, and can do what they want. I just do not think on our part though, it should be an expectation that going forward, we can expect that most of our kids, grandkids, and other descendants will go on to kill, cheat, steal, and eventually create a world as bad or worse than the one we were trying to escape from. There has to be a way to let them choose for themselves, but also educate them well enough to let them see how stupid those actions really are. We need to build a more enlightened society, to where our kids can use their free will to gain wisdom and build something truly beautiful. I thought that would be possible. We have used simulators, schools, helped support them in their formative years, and done literally everything we can think of. Yet despite all of these troubles, nothing has turned out as we planned. How can we fix this?
We have done research with genetics, neurology, with examining the innermost thoughts, and how everything from other people to our environment affects us in the short and long term. I have even studied the humanoid people, from the other new dimension we found. There is no easy way to put this, but we are far less free than what we think. If we look at other animals, we see instincts and species-specific behavior drive every individual member of their species to act in very similar ways. Take a cow, for example. We like to think it is just instincts that drive their behavior, but we really do not stop to think what that really means. We do not think that we as thinking individuals have instincts anymore. Our decisions and free will guide us. We are not a slave to instincts. For a cow, grasses taste and smell better for them than for us. They do have personalities and some will of their own, but they eat and do what feels good to them. They cannot control the fact that their tastes differ from ours. This is part learned, but also very heavily hardwired in. In humans, when we are very low on a vital nutrient or element, we will very often have cravings that we would not have otherwise. When thirsty, or hungry, food and water actually do taste better than when we are full. When low on nutrients, we might crave something like fish, or in some rare cases even dirt. Every animal does very different things, not because some mysterious force compels them to do it, but because it feels best to them, or they have an urge to do that. Every individual lion would generally choose to be more violent, because the feelings, and the way their minds are hardwired, helps it make sense to be so. Cows are less violent, because they do not see the world in the same way. Behind those feelings though, are hormones, and processing centers of their brains that both chemically and physically drive them to do certain things, for them to survive. In humans, we do have hormones and processing centers that hardwire lust, hunger, thirst, anger, all into our bodies. Stress triggers automatically, and when it does, our mind starts processing information in a very different way than it does when we are calm. We cannot help that. It is automatic. When a young adult male sees an attractive female, even if he is in a committed relationship, automatic processes fill his body with hormones, and automatically the mind and body start a number of processes that are very distracting, to put it kindly. With our free will, we can override those feelings, but it is always a conscious choice to do so. When studying the humanoids on the other new frequency we have discovered, they have a large variety of races and genetics to study, more than our world ever had. For the most part though, the DNA is remarkably similar to our own. I did see elements of very different genetics, and found out why. They were not one, but two different somewhat recently extinct species of humanoid, that were different than the one that inhabits the world now. We never had any other similar species on our world, and they had two, just that I see so far. These two species were more closely related to each other than to the modern humanoids. From the archaeological records, and advanced computer simulations, using their genetic information, both species were more gentle and peaceful than either our species, or the modern humanoids there. One of the traits that will be useful for us, that the northernmost extinct species had, was that they often tended to think things though more, and be less impulsive, on average, than either our species or the modern humanoids there are. They grew up in colder northern climates than even our own species, and they used a slower, more thoughtful approach that was more beneficial to the group. Their survival relied on other members of their group, and in taking the right action. Thinking things through more carefully helped, because the climate was unforgiving, and there was far less room for error. Mistakes could mean death for several people. Southern climates had more abundant food on average. The modern humanoids evolved to be quicker, more violent, and be more individualistic, to beat out others competing for the same resources. That is ultimately why they won out. The other two were outmatched. Their genetics went into the gene pool of the modern humans, but as distinct species, they are gone now. In order to save us all, we need to control our desires, not by strong will, but by bending our bodies to do what our minds wish them to. In seeing the new genetics, and in other research, we have found ways to slow the uncontrollable impulses of lust, anger and stress, while giving us impulses to calm down and think things through. In short, we have disaster, because our genetics were too strong for most people to handle over the unnaturally long lives we now lead. We have to change genetics, and adjust our biology, to account for the problems these long lives, and violent genetics create.
Can I get you anything else?
Thank you, but no. We need to get going. Founder Abscondam, we need to see Founder X about this right away to discuss the next steps.
Later that night.
Founders, what are you two doing here? This was supposed to be a meeting with myself and Founders Bellum and Abscondam.
You fools. With the technology we have, we could pop in and out, and wipe out all of the leadership of both factions in the old world. We could rule them, rather than run. We're leading a group that will take over, and do things right. No more of this foolishness. We will all live like kings now.
To be continued.